what we're noticing and what is a fact already is because we just had a major tax reform act by the federal government. And part of that, there's lots of ramifications of that, but part of it is that more people are looking very carefully at, if I'm not going to be able to write this off on my taxes, you know, and I'm tithing or supporting or whatever word you want to use, any institution, including faith-based and unity, then that's an option that many people feel have gone away.
I agree. The issue with the new tax laws affect mostly people who itemize their deductions and therefore people of means. So it doesn't necessarily factor in well necessarily because for many of those who support the church, that they're not necessarily doing it for the tax deduction per se. Now, baby boomers and the traditionals, greatest generations, yes, I do it for tax deduction, you know, absolutely. And now that if that's taken away, will I change my giving? Probably not, but it is a factor for those who are on the border, and it matters to them. Also, you're correct that other denominations are more insulated from these trends because they are basically kind of closed systems, and that's how they're able to maintain that. And they also have practices that we would find not aligned with our values. So part of our effort in evolving the church has a shadow work component, as you are already engaged in the Q process. And so we have to understand that it's not just about trying to figure out, well, what's working. What futurists and integral theorists and what is coming from people who have studied these trends, there aren't no roadmaps or models to look to. Everything you're looking at is something that's fading away. You have to begin to create what it is that you're wanting to attain for yourself. And so part of what is happening is a grand experiment. There are thousands of efforts to move organizations and communities into this new, more resilient model. And everyone's effort is done in a different context. People are doing this. I mean, remember when we did holacracy, James? Yes. That is now flourishing in Europe. Yeah. That's it. Okay, you're next. Do you have a microphone?
Yes, I do. I'm just extremely excited about this. And I'm scared to say it. I think I'm a little bit too early in today's talk to say this because we've got a lot of fear and doubt going on right now, and I really appreciate fear and doubt because that's where you are open to facing the problems and looking for solutions for them. So I hate to say how excited I am that I was looking at your handout, and I get the sense that a lot of this can be done online, and that has me practically going into atrial fibrillation right now. My heart is racing because I can't come to evening programs. I have cataracts. So when you do something online, I can do that. And with the online streaming, the live streaming that we're doing now, so that we can have kind of like a double ministry where we're reaching people that cannot physically come, and that way we can expand without having to build new buildings and larger that we don't have the funds for doing. Anyway, we may be scared out of our wits, but you know, the flip side of being scared is being really excited. I'm so glad you're here. I hope I'm around for the next 3 years because I want to play.
All right. Thank you.
I'm Sherry. I have a couple of questions. When you were talking about the mission, I sort of got lost. There was a lot of words in there, and I was having a hard time tracking. So what I think you said is that you're going to give us a mission that we are going to play with or embrace, practice for the next 3 years?
Right. You're already doing it. So it's transforming lives and whatever else you have tagged onto that. So it's just adding transforming lives as a part of what you're identifying as your purpose, because the whole coaching program is all about coaching transformation. And so it creates a coherence around every effort that we're putting forth. And then when you have such a succinct mission as transforming lives, then as the organization unfolds, the question is, how much of what we're doing is not about transforming lives that we need to stop doing, and how much do we need to do that is about transforming lives that we need to do in different ways? Because no longer is it sustainable just to have transformation happening on Sundays. And it never really happens in a Sunday service to the depth that it can happen in other ways. And so part of the whole effort of the community is retooling the whole organization to be geared for transformation. And so when, for instance, when we have board meetings or staff meetings, anything that happens in our church, we require, tell us how it transforms lives. Because it has to be aligned with this, so that anything that we offer, people know that there's a transformative component to it. Now, it's important for us to have a common awareness around what we mean by transformation. Now, I'm not going to define what that means, because everybody has their own sense of, for themselves, what transformation means. But in a sense, it is contrasted with what is our more common practice, as you have mentioned, Lynn, about our positivity. And that is, there's a distinction between transformation and translation. In other words, translation is when our teachings and practices are all about staying positive or translating a bad situation into a better situation. Transformational teachings is about moving into the discomfort and transforming our separate self into our authentic self. And so that requires of us a willingness to be in our discomfort and own it. And until the ministry is able to own all that has gotten created, both in terms of its accomplishments as well as its regrets, we have yet to really engage the field that has to be integrated before the new organization can emerge as an evolved artifact from this awakened state, this integrated state. And so part of our effort that we're going to have next month is in the genogram activity is we're going to come together to tell the story of the church. And because storytelling brings us into a kind of psychotherapy, storytelling is the oldest form of psychotherapy, right? And so this is going to be an important event because it's going to help us understand what the energetic field of the ministry is that we have to own. And what I mean by owning, I mean the baggage. I mean the stuff that has contributed to some of your current patterns. And part of my journey in the beginning is learning about your patterns. And so much as you look at the coaching program, 99% of it's virtual. Me connecting up in video conferences with the principals in your organization. And then me coming twice a year to speak with you. This doesn't count, though. This one doesn't count. So when I come and when I speak on Sundays, I'm coaching everybody. This is my chance to coach the whole congregation, because it's very difficult for leadership to translate every single bit of insight and information to the whole community, but ultimately the whole community needs to be on the same page as the leadership. And so the whole program, the Mission-centric ministry program, works towards maturing the community so that they can partner with leadership, and to mature the leadership so they can partner with the community. It's a two-way street. And right now you're basically while you're connected in spirit, your role organizationally is not necessarily a partnership role yet. It wants to be, but you have yet to create the conditions for that to really work. And so that's going to take about a year or two. So all this happens in time, and that's what is so hard in this time, in these times, because we expect quick fixes. And so you ask any credible organizational development person, and they'll say it takes 3 to 5 years to shift culture. And so this is a 3-year program. It could be 5 years. It could easily be 5 years. And certainly, if we're not complete and you still are interested in going further, we can go further. But and you need to know that I'm starting the 4th year in my ministry with the very program that I'm going to coach to you. So I've got a head start. I've got 3 years head start. But I've learned some things in 3 years. I've learned some things that will hasten your journey, that will help it. And when we create a community of ministries that are in this program, we'll network. In other words, I'm going to have all my clients network with all the boards. All the boards will be on a Zoom call, and we're going to talk about our effort to evolve our churches. We're going to connect all the staff people between these mission-centric organizations and connect up the staff so that they can have a community. We're going to connect up all the Q folks that are in the Q coaching program, and we're going to create a community around that. And we're going to create ways in which we can access and coach these various principles within this organization so they're all working together as a coherent whole as opposed to independent silos. Do you have any of those in your church?
I think Sherry has more to her question.
Okay. It's
I'm
actually,
sorry, I just, that's...
No, that was a good ramble. That was good.
You nailed me.
So the other part of the question, you're talking about transparency and partnership, and I really like that because one of the things that's been coming up recently, of course, is money, is we're trying to figure out, how do we do more with what we've got. And personally, there's a lot of fear. It's a difficult situation. And I think I was kind of surprised at our last meeting by, kind of how short we are with money and where our money's going, and there's a lot of uncertainty about what's happening. And so I think the transparency is really critical right now because personally I'm feeling like a reluctance and a wanting to pull back. It's like I don't want to give more money if I don't know what's happening with it. And so that's kind of where I'm at. So I think it's perfect to bring to the surface.
Thank you so much. That was a great comment because you're describing another unintended consequence of your current ministry practice. The practice requires that your leadership withhold information because that's their training. Protect the congregation from stress and worry. Because you're right, your giving pattern may alter if you discover something that triggers your own sense of not enough. Right? Yeah.
So, Gary, you've said that the tithing model won't be sustainable. So my question is, there's going to have to be a paradigm shift about funding the church, and I want to know what the paradigm of funding churches looks like in the mission-centric model.
So one way to understand it is owner-based, moving from a tithing-based to an owner-based model. Now, we're not throwing out tithing. We're just not creating a funding model around tithing. Tithing is still okay. It's just not... tithing to as source is better than tithing to source, in other words. So we don't want people looking outside of themselves for a greater good. We want them invested in their own internal state as being the place from which their abundance arises. And so in the sense of tithing, we are still going to focus on tithing, but it's going to be tithing as source, not tithing to source. So there's a lot more to say about that. Now to answer your question, moving from a tithing-based funding model means that we're no longer creating a narrative, tithe as you're spiritually fed. In other words, we're looking for you to respond to us trying to feed you. Okay? that's not sustainable. It's much more for us to talk about who do we have to be in order to be able to express the abundance that is innately who we are. And so it's not about tithing to something because it has filled us. It's about knowing our capacity to be source unto our life. And that's what we have to teach people in this economy. Because if they're looking outside of themselves, they're living in the disconnect. When they look within themselves, they first discover their sense of not enough. But underlying that sense of not enough is who they truly are. So the fix of our financial issues is dealing with our sense of not enough. And so we have to begin to cultivate a sense of being more. And so when people are really connected to the effort of becoming more, they naturally connect up to a dimension of themselves that we can describe as radical generosity, especially when they are engaged in something that invites them into participating in something bigger than themselves. And so when you create a vision of transforming lives, and people have a coherent, impactful experience of having their own lives transformed, they want to share that experience. They want that experience to be universal for anybody who comes in contact with the ministry. They want to give into that purpose. They want to own the ministry's effort to make sure that that becomes what gets conveyed. And so the effort then is to bring people into greater ownership of the ministry's purpose to transform lives. And to give into that intent, not to tithe to that, but to give what one can do, to do what one can do. Let's say you have 200 people in your church, and everyone's in a different place with respect to how they are with respect to their own means, their own capacity to give, right? You have some people on fixed incomes. You have some people who are retired. You have all kinds of people, from people with of wealth and people who are impoverished in your church, right? And in the context of their capacity to move the needle, who has more power? The ones that these people over here, right? But what happens in the minister-centric model of ministry, the energetic effort is to try to make sure these people are okay, happy. Are you pleased? Are you happy with what's going on? So the effort of really trying to manage the tithing-based system is all about making sure everybody's happy, as opposed to making sure everybody is doing what they can do. Can you feel a shift? When people shift into, well, what can I do? The person over here, is the same question for this person as it is for the person of means. The difference is that where is the integrity of doing what one can do? Is it, I do my fair share, but I can do more, but I'm not going to do what I can do because I'm sort of stuck in a certain belief or pattern. So when we free the system and make it not about what you're getting, that translates into your gift back, but who are you going to be? That's your connection to fulfilling this purpose. And so the idea is that everyone in this spectrum is equal on the level of, if everyone does what they can do. You have 200 people there. Can you not see that right now with 200 people, I'm sorry, I have to stand up. Can you not see that right now with 200 people, if everyone was doing what they can do, you'd 100% underwrite this church's finances tomorrow. It's absolutely true. And now you have to wonder why it's not happening. That's what I'm addressing. That's the purpose of this program, is that I am going to help you cultivate your community to bring them into the authentic intention to own this organization, but in the context of every individual doing what they can. Not doing what they're doing, but doing what they can in the presence of the mirror. So this is a new concept. So right now, you get information about the finances of the church when there's crisis. No one's going to tell you, oh, we're doing great. Why? Because they don't want you to stop giving. Because if we think everything's great, we just might kind of relax a little bit because, we got some stuff on our end that needs some help. But the point is that when we begin to invite people into ownership and we have conversations as to what that means, and certainly there is a financial component, it's not in the context of how much I give, it's in the context of what I can do in the presence of the mirror. The mirror is basically a snapshot in time that says this is how we're doing so far in our effort to underwrite the entire expenses of this ministry 100% through automatic giving. This is how we're doing. And so from time to time, people have a sense of being invited to look at what they can do in the effort to meet this need, to fund the organization. Right now, out of 200 people, you may have 30 people in ownership. You may have 150 members, but your members aren't in ownership. But when you start cultivating ownership and getting the question, well, what does that mean? Then there's two ways to be in that question. One is in the context of what we commonly think of ownership as, and that is possessing something. In other words, we own a house, we own a car, we have property, we have stuff. But in that context of ownership, while it serves us to a limited degree, we can talk in terms of, well, when you own your house, you take care of things, right? Well, it depends upon who you are, really. So you can't necessarily use that as a universal principle because typically in the context of owning something, what we own has us. So we're not talking about that kind of ownership. We're talking about coming to terms with who we are in terms of ownership. And how much time do we spend kind of in denial of that intent that is seeking to fulfill itself through us as a greater purpose than our worry and fretting over what we're having, instead of focusing on who are we being? Because that's what unleashes our capacity. It dies with what we have unless we use what we have. And so we're going to shift the whole conversation around ownership in the context of first people owning who they've come here to be, and then looking at owning this in the context of what are you willing to do in the presence of this need. And so gradually we'll move from 30 people to 50 people to 80 people to 120 people to 200 people in 5 years in 100% ownership of this ministry's expenses, so that if you're doing any kind of fundraising, any kind of extra thing, it's all not for the purpose of survival, but for the purpose of transforming more lives and getting the things that you need to make your technology work for the millennials, because you're way behind still. If you want to cultivate those young people, technology is needed, and your screens are too small.